Greetings, mortal, I am Ratatoska. Heed my tale. For countless centuries, I have lived peacefully among the branches of the World Tree, Yggdrasil, delivering messages between the 10 realms connected by its mighty branches. I may be naught but a squirrel, but my Asgardian friends bestowed this sacred duty upon me, and I have performed it with great pride. My place was not to intervene in the affairs of gods and men, but simply to deliver news of great import. And today, the news I bring to you is quite dire indeed. For centuries, Asgard was ruled by the All-Father Odin. But no longer. Odin has entered a deep restorative slumber, and the throne has been seized by his treacherous son Loki. But oh, where was Odin's rightful heir, Thor, the god of thunder, you ask? Patience, mortal. I shall get to that in due time. Always beholden to his ego, Loki began to reshape Asgard in his vile image. But Asgard reshaped itself as well. Thanks to a strange cosmic phenomenon, this sudden surge of chronal energy caused my beloved Yggdrasil to grow wildly out of control, merging with Asgard and resulting in the birth of a place both ancient and new, Yggdrasil. Ever want to seize an opportunity, Loki now seeks to tap into the root of Yggdrasil in order to steal the raw temporal power that has been infused into its sap. What he hopes to do with such power, I do not know. As I said, I am merely a squirrel. But when it comes to the god of mischief, the answer is rarely a good one. And the false king of Yggdrasil is not alone in his machinations. When it seemed as though none would dare to support Loki's coup, Hela, the queen of the dead, came forth from the underworld and offered her aid. All she wanted in return, she claimed, was to extend her kingdom of souls into the land of the living. Though if I have learned anything about Hela over the eons, it is likely that her true motives run far deeper, and that Loki is only a pawn in a much grander scheme. Once Hela was at his side, however, Loki finally had the power he needed to take complete control over Yggdrasil and the noble race who called it home. Together, the two tyrants banished the mighty Thor into a distant dimension. Thus, I have come to you to share this tragic story, for while it may not be in my nature to take up arms against those I serve, you are bound to no such loyalty. I beseech thee, in the name of Yggdrasil, to break free from Loki's grip before he can bring the World Tree and perhaps all of reality crashing down upon us. I beg of thee, act with haste, dear mortal. The fates of all 10 realms lies in your hands. So as you can see, Loki has done the most Loki thing ever. However, if you're wondering why Loki and Hela didn't just end Thor's life, we can look at the description of the Asgardian team-up in-game Ragnarok Rebirth, where it reads, as revenge against the Allfather, Hela once dragged the souls of Odin's young heirs to her realm of the dead. Little did she realize how much chaos the brothers would cause in her domain. She should have expected as much from Loki, but Prince Thor was equally as quarrelsome, earning both royal souls a ban from Hell for all of eternity. At the time, the quote from Hela stated, "Begone with you, Odin's sons! From henceforth, should you perish, may you be eternally reborn in your own personal Ragnaroks." But to explore what exactly is going on in Asgard in detail, we'll first look into Hela's lore entry Messenger of the Abyss, which reads, "From the throne atop her realm, the Queen of Hell recalled feeling the shattering of worlds, the sundering of realities, as unknown forces knit them together again. Differently, she remembered venturing forth into her kingdom, only to discover that in Hell, little had changed. However, Hela suspected once she traveled beyond her realm, she would see profound changes, and when she had worked enchantments to gaze upon worlds newly interwoven with the 10 realms, her suspicions were confirmed. Mortals had done this? Remade time itself? Broken it, and rewound different streams into a different braid or worlds? What power was this for men to wield? Immediately, Hela set about scheming a way to make it hers. First, she knew she must understand Crenovium. One of her thralls in a life a great wizard king had brought to her a stone of sword that she had never seen before in Hell. She had paid it little mind until she grasped what the mortal Victor Von Doom had done. And it was then that she sent the flock. Her crows scouted other realms, all returning bearing samples of Crenovium, the crystallized residue of the monstrous shocks to the space-time continuum, and yet they all differed slightly from the version in Hell and from one another. Whoever learned to control this, Hela knew, would rule worlds beyond Asgard, beyond even the 10 realms themselves. Hela's intrigue deepened. New lands meant expanding the borders of Hell and welcoming vast numbers of new creatures into her ever-growing legions, perhaps even claiming the souls of the great beings known as Celestials. Only recently had she become aware of them, and then only through a new soul in Hell, cast there from another universe by the, what did he call it? The time stream entanglement. This pitiful mortal who met their end in the event spilled forth knowledge of vast realms of space filled with fantastic creatures. At a wave of her hand, Hela's crows feasted on the mortal's soul, her mind setting on a new goal. The souls, and thus the power of these great beings, would belong to her, and when they did, she would sweep unchallenged through the 10 realms, uniting them under her banner of Hell. Undoubtedly though, Loki was hatching his own schemes to utilize Cronovium to increase his own power and ensure Asgard never slipped from his grasp, but Loki's schemes never worried Hela, because often his petty obsessions benefited her by causing conflicts that added to her legion. At some point, she suspected he would approach her proposing some sort of arrangement, perhaps an alliance. Perhaps she would consent and they would begin the dance of waiting for the right moment to betray each other. Oh, the joys of family. Until then, she would proceed with her own plans, which led her to the current moment as she heard from a messenger from a distant place that she had never heard of before. Her initial response was to annihilate it for the arrogant crime of trespassing in her realm. However, it seemed to her that these disruptions of time and space could be a gift. Had it not opened vast new possibilities for Hell? Surely, she would learn what new worlds, new universes now lay within her grasp. It was a strange creature appearing like blobs and tendrils of a terry black substance bonded with a host. Its liquid flesh mingled aspects of its own nature and that of its host, currently a Jotun priestess, who even though she was no longer alive, had enough of the Jotun soul remaining that she was still present for Hela to feel her horror at being bound to such a monstrosity. How curious though. At the same time, the creature or the symbiote had no such horror, or at least it didn't show it. Tell me, little creature, what brings you to this place?
You would do well to listen, Queen of Death, it said. I bring tidings from Null, mighty lord of the abyss.
And what is a Null? Is he the god of all creatures such as you? She made no effort to hide her scorn. This Null was, in all likelihood, as debased and parasitic as its worshipper who stood before her.
His power is eons older than yours, and he has his own claims on creatures whose essences he has consumed.
Ah, Hela thought. Of course. I take it he means to claim the Celestials as well. The symbiote nodded and flicked out its tongue.
Null has learned that one of the Celestials is now in this realm. You cannot keep it, Asgardian. It is his to claim, and it will be the key to his freedom.
I cannot? Hela stood from her throne. Bold of you, parasite, to tell me what I can and cannot do in my own realm. What enters Hell is mine forever. In fact, she said, giving the symbiote a closer look, perhaps I will even keep you. What manner of soul does a creature like you possess? The symbiote remained still. Hela let it wander for quite a while as she pondered what she had already learned. The key to his freedom, the emissary had said. So this Null was a god in chains, yet he still possessed the reach to send a message to Hell? He knew the power of Celestials, and on top of all of this, somehow he knew that the Tangled Worlds had brought new souls into Hell. Therefore, there must now be a way from Hell to... What is this world you come from, creature?
Clintar, O Queen.
A name she knew vaguely. People from a culture long since annihilated had once come to her realm from there. She considered a little longer. I release you, she said. Now release your host. The symbiote did, peeling and secreting and withdrawing from the skeletal form of the Jotun priestess. Return to your master, Hela went on, and tell him that he may rule Clintar, but Hela rules Hell. And if he wishes to fight me, she smiled, then he too will become one of my subjects. Do you have that, messenger? The symbiote mask quivered, but without a host, it could not speak. Hela worked a spell, drawing forth knowledge from its mind. She swirled open a gateway to a world of darkness, an impenetrable jungle where no sane mortal would tread. Go, Hela said, before I change my mind. The symbiote sprang through the gateway and was gone, with Hela letting the gateway close. Now, Null knew that she could reach out to his world directly, and her plan was to let him think on that and consider his next move. From here, Hela gathered up a mass of Cronovium imbued of the essence of Hell, and in her mind she thought that just as all lives must end, all things must move through time. So did it not follow that all time ended in hell as well? And did it not follow that hell could grow through this crystallized time, encompassing new realms brought near by the entanglement of worlds? This strange hell Cronovium was shot through with black and green, and she spoke to it, shaping it into an enchantment, the first of many. All living beings, she said, in all realms, in all universes, they shall be thralls of hell. They need not come to me. I will use you, Cronovium, to expand hell not through space, but through time. Beings more ancient than stars will be mine, and beings not yet born will be mine. This is a powerful magic and will take some time to work, but it shall be done. And then Null, she smiled, he will be mine as well. Now, she suspected that the symbiote emissary was not Null's only gambit. Doubtless, he was plotting against her, seeking ways to undermine her in the reach of hell. Let him, she thought. Let him beguile mortals and persuade greedy gods that they can band together against me. That would bring them all the closer. And as she already told the symbiote emissary, whatever entered hell was Hella's, unless she chose to let it go. And soon, souls would no longer come to hell. Hell would come to them. Her realm would grow outward through time, drawing in numerous souls until she had an army so vast, not even gods could hope to resist it. Because in Hella's mind, the 10 realms were just the beginning. As she spun the black and green Cronovium jewel over her palm, she says, "Yield to me your secrets. Bring to me the future, as I already rule the past." Now, at roughly the same time, in Loki's Destined Kingship lore entry, we see his reaction to the time stream entanglement. In the immediate aftermath of the reckless mortal's clumsy scrambling of timelines, Loki noticed something quite curious. The sap bleeding from Yggdrasil had a new, particularly magical essence. He began to experiment with it, shape it, concentrate it, intensify it. Time, he discovered, was the very core of its essence, and right away, he conceived an intense desire to visit a future Asgard to see what mischief he might make there. But quickly, he came away not only disappointed, but frightened, and not that he'd ever admit it, saddened. For the future Asgard he beheld was a ruin, its throne broken and cast down, its collections looted, its surviving people grubbing in the ruins to survive. No, Loki thought. Surely, this is not Asgard's only future. So, he brewed the enchantment once more, and discovered an Asgard overrun by Jotun, with Laufey himself grunting on the throne, and Asgard's people little more than bones. And another Asgard in flames, with Surtur bestride the blazing trunk of Yggdrasil, while the fabled towers of this realm collapse in fiery rubble. And another, windswept and empty, the cask of eternal winters broken open in the throne room. And another, shattered into drifting fragments against a sea of stars. And another, impossibly sunk under an ocean, with vast shadows moving in the moonlit waters above. Hundreds more. Thousands more. Asgard's burned. Asgard's frozen. Asgard's overrun by dark elves, or dwarves, or enemies from Midgard, or the worlds beyond the stars. A Kree-devastated Asgard. An Asgard ravaged by the Eternals. An Asgard ruled by an alien overlord whose minions oozed and sprang like living shadows, hunting down the last of the realm's true subjects. In all of these, Loki did not find the one thing for which he truly searched. Himself. And then, at last, an Asgard, mighty and unbroken. An Asgard, overarched by Yggdrasil's branches and underpinned by Yggdrasil's roots. Her towers shining, her people vibrant and untroubled, her wealth untouched, and her throne occupied by Loki. He reeled back into his own time, mind aflamed with the implications of what he had seen. How many destroyed Asgards had he witnessed? After all that, to see the one surviving realm be ruled by himself? Well, Loki thought, the only Asgard that survives this absurd misadventure is one in which my true destiny is at least acknowledged, my primacy accepted, my sovereignty celebrated, as it should be. Now remains the work of bringing this future to pass. Immediately, the crucial points of the plan presented themselves to him. First, of course, he would have to maneuver the Allfather into the deep enchanted slumber of Odin's sleep. Tricky, but he had done it before. The biggest obstacle was making sure that Heimdall didn't notice until it was too late. Then Loki would use Thor's desire to help their father against him, guiding him into a certain place where Loki would have to worry about him for a long time. But these were powerful enchantments he was planning on using even for Loki. He was going to need to bring in a co-conspirator or two. It would be easy enough to betray them and rid himself of them later, but for a brief time they would be useful. So, Karnilla, of course. Aligning with the Norns was an absolute necessity if he were to retain rule over Asgard and not see it suffer any of the tragic fates he had witnessed. And while a master of magic, the Queen of the Norns was no great schemer, at least not compared to the god of lies. He also thought of Karnilla's closest ally, Hela. She was family after all, and these kind of things should be kept in the family whenever possible. Also, she would be useful because of her vast power and unlimited legions who would keep the Valkyrie and the Crimson Hawks busy, leaving the throne unguarded. If Loki could just figure out what to offer Hela in return. And this brings us back to Hela's story, where as Loki manifested in Hela's realm unannounced just because he could and he knew it annoyed her, she immediately sensed his presence and sent an escort. But this time, it was a retinue of fallen Asgardian warriors riding skeletal horses and singing the ghostly songs of the Asgardian dead who never made it to Valhalla. To the accompaniment of these mournful, discordant strains, Loki followed his escorts to Hela's throne. In this kingdom, bones twisted by dark magic paved the path to Hela's castle, while particularly favored souls became feasts for her Nastron crows. Loki hated the decor though, even more than he hated the thought of Thor sitting on the throne of Asgard. Well, perhaps not that much. And speaking of thrones, Hela sat on hers, regarding him with an imperious and icy stare as he approached and the ghostly retinue vanished. "Loki," she said, "whatever foolish scheme has brought you here, be assured it will not succeed. Return to your realm and disturb me no further." "Oh, sister, great queen. Whenever you call me queen, Loki, or for that matter, sister, I know you want something. Tell me what it is, and spare me the insincere implication that you care about family." "Oh, I do very much. Our family rules realms, and we have a responsibility to rule them as well as possible. Unfortunately, we are not currently doing that because I am not ruling Asgard, and you want my help." "Why, of course," Loki said. "My plan will succeed with or without you. But as I said, we're family," and for the third time, she interrupted him. "Why should I?" "Why, to be rid of the Allfather whose time has passed, and to be rid of our beloved Odin's son, who would otherwise succeed the throne of Asgard. Which is the one thing you cannot stand to see happen." Loki didn't give her the satisfaction of agreeing. "You see, Loki, of all master plotters, you are the easiest to predict, because all of your plots are ultimately only about one thing." Loki inclined his head, again unwilling to make a verbal acknowledgement. "You've been working on new magic. I smell it on you," Hela said. "Tell me." "Ah, the sap of Yggdrasil? Observe." Loki cut a small notch in one of the world tree's roots, and as the sap oozed out, he captured it and began to work a charm to extract its essence. "As the world tree shapes the limits of our realms," he said, "this substance shapes the limits of our time." After a moment, he held a small ball of what looked like amber in the palm of his hand. "Take it. It will show you the future of your realm, just as it showed me the future of my own." "Yours? You speak of Asgard?" "Yes." And at that time, he placed the ball in Hela's hand and began to describe what he had seen. Now, some time goes by while the two are speaking, and Hela does actually see what Loki was seeing in the Chronovium as well. However, at the end of the vision, she simply says, "Ah, yes, it is quite deserving of an ah," Loki said. "But the real question is, will you help me?" "I will," Hela said, "but I have my own vision for this Chronovium, for it has fallen in my realm as well. In return for my help, you will help me bring this vision to fruition." "Of course," Loki said, intending it to be a lie, but not even he knew when an attempted lie might become an inadvertent truth. Now, oddly, before we get to Thor, there's actually another story that crosses right through these events, and that would be Adam Warlock's lore entry, Golden Sail. In his entry, it says, "In the beginning, there was darkness. The universe was no more than an endless void, a vast expanse of silent nothingness.
until celestial forces shaped the stars and nurtured life into being. Just as the universe began in darkness, so did I, created within a protective cocoon from which I burst forth, fully formed. A golden guardian designed to bring peace to the galaxy with my vast cosmic might. But there is a cycle to life. And just as I was born from this cocoon, now I've returned to it, much sooner than I could have anticipated. My cosmic awareness sensed that something was amiss, a great disturbance in the fabric of time and space itself. As multiple realities and timelines became entangled, I reflexively shielded myself within this protective shell. If I truly hoped to fulfill my ultimate purpose, then I would have to bide my time and build my strength for the trials ahead. But what would they be? Even with my deep connection to the primal forces of the universe, I was both literally and figuratively in the dark once more. As I slumbered within my restorative sheath, it became a wayward vessel floating through the cosmos. I was no longer in control of my own destiny, merely a passenger adrift on the currents of fate. The silence out amongst the stars brought a sense of tranquility I had not experienced since before my birth. However, this serenity would not last long.
Adam.
A voice called my name, echoing not in my ears, but inside of my mind. Whoever was calling me was reaching out across the void with a psyche even more powerfully attuned than my own.
We are not so different, you and I, the voice continued. We both slumber while the multiverse burns around us. Some gods we are.
As the powerful words pulsed within my brain, an image began to form in my mind's eye. A man confined to a sacred chamber, not quite a cocoon like my own. His was nearly as old as time itself, yet similar in many ways. The bearded man within was frail and weak, devoid of power. But he was not always so, as my mind was flooded with brief glimpses of his storied past. It became clear that he was once a mighty king that ruled a glorious realm for centuries on end.
Time is something that I have never feared, not until now. Time and space are twisting around us, and I am trapped here within the Odin sleep, unable to do a damn thing about it.
The Odin sleep. Of course. I knew the voice was familiar. Even if the man himself no longer was, it belonged to the Allfather of Asgard, mighty Odin. Had he fallen to the same forces that had caused me to reflexively retreat into my cocoon?
Nay,
Odin replied, reading my own thoughts.
I was brought low by the machinations of my own son. The trickster known as Loki. The foul child has usurped the throne of Yggdrasil and is set to destroy our proud legacy for his own selfish ends yet again.
Did he say Yggdrasil? But the proper name of his realm was the least of my concerns. While the rage that the Allfather felt about his son's actions was palpable, there was something more beneath it. A deep concern that spanned far beyond the realm he once ruled.
You too are preparing for a battle when you awaken, Golden One. And while my son may indeed test your mettle,
he's naught but a distraction from your true enemy. There is darkness in the cosmos, Adam. One far deeper than that of our slumbers. I have felt it trying to creep its way into my realm, even into my own dreams. Should it be let loose, I fear that it shall corrupt all it touches, snuffing out even the stars itself until nothing remains. What could he be speaking of? I called out to Odin for an answer, but his voice had muted to nothing more than a distant echo. As my cocoon drifted far past the embattled realm of Yggdrasil, I left a small fraction of my soul's energy behind with the sleeping Odin, a hint of light to keep the darkness he spoke of at bay. I prayed it would be enough. In the darkness of the cosmos, while Adam Warlock floats away to his next location, let's give him some time to get there and finally discuss everyone's favorite son of Odin, Thor. In Thor's lore entry Gone with the Thunder, we learn, boom. Thor sat in the Tower of Solitude, the library prison once used by Allfather Odin. Hunched over a stone bench in a stone room, the tower's sole prisoner on the orders of his brother, he fumed silently, waiting for the chance to act and fearing what fate might befall Asgard if he could not act soon. Boom. From outside came rhythmic impacts as something powerful hurled itself against the tower's walls. Thor could only wait. Loki had outwitted him, duping him into entering the tower and imprisoning him there. As one might expect of a clever usurper such as Loki, the room was enchanted to stifle any sound he might utter. Boom! Dust and mortar drifted from one wall of Thor's cell. He stood. It was almost time. Loki might have betrayed him and made his devious play for the throne of Asgard, but even Loki could not think of everything. It had not occurred to him, for example, that Thor could call Mjolnir without making a sound. Boom! Mjolnir exploded through the wall of the Tower of Solitude and met Thor's extended hand. He gave a shout, relieved to hear the sound of his voice again. Brother! With its walls shattered, the Tower of Solitude no longer held its enchantments. More quietly than his initial challenge, Thor added, "You have a surprise in store." He flew through the hole over the city of Asgard and towards the palace, with Yggdrasil's roots arching far overhead. Loki had crews at hard labor tapping the world's tree sap, which we've discussed is rich in Chronovium. Thor had no doubt that Loki would cut a deal with the dwarves or anyone else who could use the rich sap to create magical weapons or instruments if he hadn't already. But Chronovium had also transformed Loki's magic, making him even more powerful. But Thor felt it too. It glimmered in the carvings on Mjolnir's Uru head, and he even felt it in the Odin Force. But now, Loki would feel it too. As Thor reached the throne room, he shouted out his brother's name, letting the challenge echo across the city. Loki! Your plan didn't work, brother. You see, I'm free. And Loki was there, manifesting in the air just out of Thor's reach. On the contrary, brother, my plan is working perfectly. Do you not think I anticipated you would solve this problem the only way you ever solve any problem? He smirked. That is to say, with brute force. The smirk was the opening Thor needed, the single moment of inattention that always got Loki in trouble. He seized Loki and dropped to the ground, smashing his brother into the stones of Asgard's palace plaza as he raised Mjolnir, but Loki stung Thor's hand with a short knife and twisted away. How long had they been inexorably moving towards this moment? Centuries. Tens of centuries. I have tried, Thor thought. I tried to make him feel like one of us. But Loki only ever looks out for Loki. And now, again, Asgard's future hangs in the balance. I knew you had escaped the tower before you were all the way through the hole, Loki sneered. It always makes me chuckle when you scream brother, like when we were children. And yet you have answered my call, Thor shot back. If you could have stopped me, why the charade? Oh, brother, Loki said, twisting the word. You know I love a charade. And by escaping, you have helped settle the little dispute I was having. You see, a certain someone who may be shortly joining our conversation did not believe you would escape. And now that you have, she will be doubtless to see the wisdom of my proposed course of action. As if he had summoned it, a portal opened, and through it, Thor saw the unmistakable landscape of Hell, bleak and dark and endless. Hela's legions of dead were on the march, with Chronovium glittering in their empty eyes. Hela herself leading them on. Space bent around her, and in the next instant, she stepped through the portal. Now, a lot of the lore of Asgard beyond this is told not only through Thor's reveal trailer, where we see the moments after he broke free and attempted to stop Loki. However, there's actually a lot to learn from the in-game missions we got during this Chronovium saga in Season 0, as well as the actual consequences of what we do in-game. First off, on the Yggdrasil map in Marvel Rivals, there are multiple different objectives, depending on what team you're on, that reveal the different outcomes happening in different realities. In one game, you'll lead a team to stop Loki's Yggdrasil sapping device, allowing the Chronovium-filled sap to be restored within the tree itself, and cutting off Loki and Hela's supply of the resource, since it merging of Yggdrasil is the reason it's also appearing in Hell. On the other side, you may get tasked with defending the sapping device in order to wither Yggdrasil completely, sapping it of all of its juicy amber insides, which I'm sure is only gonna mean bad things, but hey, the objective is the objective, right? Other objectives on the Yggdrasil map are things like freeing Jarnbjorn, which has been locked away, by delivering it to Thor via his two trusty Go companions, giving the Asgardian even more power to help in the fight. Or of course, the inverse, where you keep Jarnbjorn in captivity, banging against the walls in the spawn room forevermore. Beyond these, there are missions for dispelling the illusion on the mural in the Yggdrasil throne room, as well as shattering the statue of Loki in Yggdrasil's Bifrost Garden, which once again coincide with the Thor reveal trailer, and also goes to help him fight Loki and Hela off from his home. But more than anything, it's just a really cool in-game nod to the lore they're building up, and the story that's being told, which I really appreciate. Now, while we're on the topic of Thor, since it's going to be a little bit before we mention him again, I did want to
to bring up his team up with Storm and Captain America, despite the fact that both of those characters are also a ways off from appearing in the lore as well. However, in their Voltaic Union team up, it says that few have proven capable of lifting the legendary hammer Mjolnir due to an ancient Asgardian enchantment that allows only those deemed worthy to wield it. Though that honor is most often belonged to the god of thunder Thor, a small handful of mortals, including Captain America and Storm, have managed to raise this mighty mallet high and call forth his fury in times of dire need, with a reminder of the inscription on Mjolnir that reads, "Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the title of Thor." Finally, if you completed all the missions this season in your inventory, you should have a Thread of Fate collectible item, and its description more or less echoes a lot of what we've explained so far, but it goes into a little more detail on how Loki is trying to use his share of the Chronovium Yggdrasil sap to create new Threads of Fate, allowing him to rewrite the 10 realms to his will, so it's nice that we actually managed to snag one ourselves. Now, beyond their lore entries, we know that at some point in the story of Marvel Rivals, Hela gains enough power where she begins to call herself the Empress of the Cosmos, likely thanks to the fact that using Chronovium, she can gather energy from the souls at the end of the universe from all the realities mixing in with hers, giving her unfathomable power and enhancing all of her troops like we saw at the end of Thor's lore. Loki, on the other hand, at some point in the near future, also has a meeting with one of Null's emissaries, and unlike Hela, who threatened it, sending it away, it seems like Loki actually made a visit to Clintar and ended up bonding himself with a primordial symbiote, changing himself into Loki the All-Butcher, or his official title, Loki the Necro God. Now, it's to be seen whether Loki bonded with part of Null directly or one of his other primordial symbiotes like Rex or Grendel, but I actually personally have my bet on it being part of Grendel the symbiote dragon, since his armor does sort of look draconic in nature. These are probably the strongest versions of these characters we've seen yet, maybe aside from Loki in season 2, so let's see how Thor is going to overcome them and save his father as well as his realm. And with that, we conclude the Asgard section of the lore, where we're starting to learn a little bit more about Chronovium and this massive battle between realities. But now it's time to take a completely different angle, because Null is increasingly becoming important in our story, so next let's finally start to explain just what Spider-Man is doing in 2099 as we enter the 2099 arc of the story, starting with the Web Warriors.